Hello, fellow booktubers. It's John here from Toronto, and I'd like to talk to you today. I'm just going to do something here. Hold on. There, maybe that's better. I'd like to talk about a short story today. So far, I've done just novels and that sort of thing. And the short story I'd like to talk about is one that might not be all that well known, but it is by Margaret Atwood, who is, of course, Canada's iconic, fiction writer and also an essayist, and what else? She's quite the big deal here. So anyway, she wrote, I believe it was 1990, not sure the year, a short story called Death by Landscape. And I teach this one to my grade 12 students quite often. And it is basically semi-autobiographical. It takes place at a all girls summer camp called Camp Manitou, and it involves a girl called Lois, and it begins actually as a recollection. So she is actually she lost her husband recently. Her kids are all grown up, and so she now has a condominium downtown Toronto, facing Lake Ontario, and has a lovely view and all that. But she has a number of a group of 7 paintings. The group of 7 were a group of 7 Canadian painters, and they did all landscapes. They're not all, but mostly landscapes, and they're very famous for them. So no people in them, landscapes, right? And she buys all these ones that are just natural landscapes. She's not exactly sure why, but there's something in them that she is obsessed with. She can't really put her finger on it, and it's not necessarily something good. It's something that's actually scares her. And then she goes back in time when she's 14 years old, one summer at Camp Manitou, and we find out all about this. It's beautifully written, great detail, certain amounts of humor in it to keep you going, but it's basically a kind of a dark tale at heart. There are some nice memories of growing up, doing the camp things that the girls do. However, she talks about one summer in particular when she's 14, as I say, where a new camper starts, and this one is Lois, and Lois is from Chicago. And Lois, our protagonist Lois, feels a little bit awkward. Lucy is very kind of talkative at times, certainly with Lois, sorry. Get these names mixed up, L and L. And so anyway, the idea here is that Lois, our protagonist, feels intimidated. She feels that she is not as good as Lucy, because Lucy is very urban, very grown up. And she seems to look at the camp like, oh, well, at one point, Lois says to Lucy, my father plays golf. And Lucy says, everybody plays golf. My mother plays golf. And she's also richer than Lois's family. Okay, Lucy's family is more wealthy. So, but nevertheless, they become best friends, and they write to each other in the off season, and they do become best friends. But then there's an incident that happens on a canoe trip that these girls go on with some other trustworthy campers and 2 very skilled and veteran counselors Pat and Kip are their names. And by the way, the owner of the camp and very much hands-on director is Cappy. So she's inherited the camp from her parents. So anyway, they go on this canoe trip, which goes for a few days. Hold on a second. I have to have my morning coffee. And so Lucy and Lois climb this hill. They reach one of the spots, which is, I suppose, an island. And they reach one of these camping spots, which the camp has done this before with their campers. There's a pit, sort of a fire pit already there. They go on this island, like I say, maybe an island, and they see a hill. And so they decide that they want to go up that hill and take a look at it and take a look down at the lake and see what the view is like. So they do, just Lois and Lucy. And while they're there, Lucy says she has to go to the bathroom. And so Lois, respectfully keeps a few feet away and, sort of waits for Lucy. And then something strange happens. Lois hears sort of like a shout, but it's a quick shout. It's gone almost as quickly as it started. And she looks around, and Lucy is not there. And she's thinking to herself, just a few seconds ago she had said it would make a great jump from here, and I told her you'd have to be crazy. And so she's looking frantically around and can't find Lucy anywhere. So she jets down the hill and talks, to Pat and Kip and says, Lucy's gone. What do you mean gone? And so they freak out and everything else. So they, paddle around the spot where she may have jumped or fell. Nothing. Not a sign of anything. And so they, takes a couple of days to get back to camp, and they row back to camp, or canoe back to camp, and they get there, and Cappy, calls the police, of course, and the police in their boats go through, and they put divers down and everything else. No sign of Lucy at all. That's it. And to make the long story short, because even though it's a short story, it's a long short story. To make it sort of to cut through some of the fat. That's it. So the camp has to close because once the news hits and the parents know, of course, what's going on, they want their kids back right away. And before her parents pick her up, Cappy calls Lucy into her office and talks to her about what happened, this great disappearance. And she says, Lois, sometimes when people are really, really angry, they do things that they wouldn't normally do. And, maybe even forget that they did it afterwards. And what's happening here is that Lois, Cappy, the owner, she wants some kind of closure on this. And as far as she is concerned, when when Lois starts crying and says, I didn't push her, this Lois, again, Cappy, she sort of has a smug smile. And she gets what she wants. It's not something she's going to report to the police or anything like that. No evidence, right? But as far as she's concerned, Lois pushed Lucy down into the water. We have no evidence of that as readers. No evidence at all. But this event, which is never solved, bothers Lois for the rest of her life. She feels that she has never fully been in her life. It's just stuff that's happened around her, her marriage, her giving birth, having kids, all that kind of stuff. And she just can't sort of get loose of this happening. And we go back to her as an adult in her condominium in Toronto, and she looks at her paintings, all these landscape paintings that she has, making sure she buys only those with no people in them, no sign, no house or anything like that, just wilderness. And the idea is that this is very psychological, obviously. The idea is that with Lucy, the biggest haunting has been what happened? Where could she be? Because if a person is dead, you can see them in the casket. Okay, they're dead. They are somewhere. They're in a box, in a hole with ground covered. We know where they are. They're there. But with Lucy, you see, they never found her. They don't know what happened to her, really. And it's something that is too hard for people. It's like people, if you remember a few years ago, that plane that just disappeared. And obviously it must have crashed somewhere in some ocean, I suppose, but they never found any sign of it at all. And the survivors are left behind with that empty feeling, like, where are they? Like, where are the remains? It's just something that you can't get your head around. And so the idea is that when Lucy looks at these landscape paintings, she's thinking Lucy's in there somewhere in all of those paintings or any of those paintings. But she's there because the idea of the wilderness, and this is a very Canadian thematic thing that we have here, that the wilderness is so expansive that no matter how far you go, how deep you go into the forest, you can never go to the deepest. I mean, you can't go and you can't go anywhere, right? All you can do is hope to come back out of it, and so again, this is something that Lois Atwood does an amazing job of writing this short story. I really recommend you read it. I'm not doing it justice at all, but it is called Death by Landscape, and a really, really terrific short story, very psychologically alluring, shall I say, and certainly it keeps you thinking about things, I would think. So that's it for me. I just thought I'd get a short story in there. I hope I do the next one more justice. Thank you very much, folks. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.